Let's hit it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about.
And welcome back to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm Lori La Bey, the founder, and my mother lived with dementia for 30 years, so I'm really passionate about this topic. If you liked our opening music, it's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms. For those of you that are new to our show, Alzheimer Speaks is about sound information, not just soundbite. We like to have real conversations, and we take about an hour to dive deep. Our goal is to raise everyone's voice, from those diagnosed to those who care, to those who serve and support them, to researchers, movie directors, singers, songwriters, you name it. We want to hear from you. We're all in this together. To our listeners, I always say thank you. I love you so much. Your likes, your clicks, your shares have really broadened our brand footprint all around the world. And I know you're really going to enjoy today's show when we talk about the film Determined. And some of you may not be aware that October is Lewy Body Awareness Month. Let me tell you about a couple of shows we've got coming up. We're going to be talking with IBM, who is going to really focus on artificial intelligence, known as AI, in Alzheimer's disease. I can't wait for that conversation. Some of our past shows, we had Aaron Blight with us, who talked about caregiving, what happens when it knocks on your door. We had Val from Australia, who's living with dementia. And we had Immune Bio and Amika talk about some of their research as well. All of our shows are archived, and we've been doing this since 2011. So there's plenty for you to listen to. There is also a new program out, and it's called the Wednesday Wave, and it's going to run from October 14th through December 16th. And you can find more out about that by going to vamostheater.co.uk, and then just go to their tab that's Arts in Projects. Dementia Action Alliance, known as DAA, has come out with a new online program. And they say Zoom isn't just for meetings anymore, it's for engagement. So it's for people living with dementia who are at home. And they also have a program for people in assisted livings and memory care. So go to daanow.org and you'll find out more information about that. I also want to give a shout out to Artist Senior Living in Woodbury, Minnesota. They have launched a new memory cafe called The Artist Way, and our next meeting is November 18th. It was the third Wednesday of every month, and their meetings are virtual. You can get more information by contacting them at 612-200-0506. That's 612-200-0506. And Arthur's Memory Cafe has also gone virtual. We were one of the first cafes in the country here, and we meet on the second and the fourth Wednesday of each month at 1 o'clock, and you can just reach out to me for more information on that. We also have some exciting news, and we're just kind of doing teasers on this, but I'm just going to read this to you because we're launching a new program November 10th, which is just in 3 weeks. So does the thought of dementia disturb you to the point where you're losing sleep? Or maybe it just sidetracks your mind all day long? Well, we believe that it helps to get through those tough times when you're feeling supported. And we know that's what this new program is going to do. So Please watch for our big rollout November 10th. And you won't be able to miss it no matter how hard you try, because we're very, very excited about this. I also want to mention MDVIP's Brain Health Quiz. You can find information on that by just going to alzheimerspeaks.com. It's right on our main page. And a big shout out to Coro Health. That's Coro Health. They're still allowing people during COVID to download 2 of their apps, Music First and also Choral Faith. And last, I'm going to shout out to the Memory Cafe directory. Dave has just done a phenomenal job. It now has cafes in 5 different countries, and it breaks out which ones are now virtual. Last, we're going to hear from the Footbar Walker, and then we will be back to talk with the ladies of Determined.
The Footbar Walker was designed not only to assist the patient, but also the caregiver. It's like having a portable pull bar everywhere you go. Patients have more control of their motion and pain management, and no lifting from the caregiver is required. Caregivers, put your foot down and quit hurting your own health, no matter which side of the Footbar Walker you're on. It's a win-win. Call 731-924-4444 and visit our factory showroom in Paris, Tennessee, or visit us online at thefootbarwalker.com.
Well, I'm so excited to introduce you two to our audience here on Alzheimer Speaks. I'm really excited about having this conversation today. And Therese Barry is the producer of the film called Determined, which has been her idea since 2011. And Therese and I have gone back quite a few years. Her mother died of Alzheimer's disease, just like mine did. I never had the tenacity to pursue putting together a film. And this is a pretty dynamic view into families dealing with dementia. Therese, like I said, has really spearheaded this whole process, from funding and getting all the legal clearances that are necessary. And she's the creative producer and just a real integral storyteller in this whole film, and is part of the editing process as well. Prior to stepping into this role of film, she worked in healthcare. And she's got over 30 years of program management. So she didn't step into it blindly, but she might argue with me on that one, because the film industry, I'm sure, is quite a bit different than the healthcare industry. So welcome, Therese. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Lori. Great to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So next I want to introduce you to Melissa Godoy, and she is a director, a cinematographer, and an editor. And she was a line producer for the 2019 Oscar-winning documentary featuring American Factory on Netflix. She also worked on its prequel, The Last Truck, as well. So she's very familiar with the whole film industry and what the heck is going on there. And Melissa's directing includes a feature documentary about creative aging called Do Not Go Gently, which aired on PBS for 12 years. That's kind of an incredible run. And with the support of the Ohio Arts Council on Arts and Learning Program, she also directed 2 fictional films with residents and staff at an Alzheimer's daycare prior to embarking on this film called Determined. So welcome, ladies. Like I said, this is going to be a very fun conversation. Now, before we get into our line of questioning, I always like to ask my guests, so my audience has some kind of base, on have you been touched in your own family or circle of friends with dementia? And Therese, if you could just give us just a little bite, because you're part of this film. So,
well, yes, in the early 2000s, my mother developed Alzheimer's disease, and I was part of that journey with my dad. And from the very beginning, trying to figure out what was wrong, going to the first medical appointments, the neurologist, etc. And then the slow progression of the disease that picked up its pace, over time. And all those different steps and the increasing difficulties my father had in caring for her, at home with help from me, and often my siblings, would visit as well. So we were touched during that time to where it, got to a point where my father just could not take care of her anymore, and we had to look for a nursing home. And we weren't proactive, which is a difficult thing when you're caught at the 11th hour. But we managed through it, and so that's how I got acquainted with the disease head on.
That's how most of us do when it comes to dementia. It just it doesn't come quietly, and softly in the night. It just kind of hits you over the head and changes your world and changes everybody in the family's world and friends. Melissa, how about you? Have you been touched personally in your own family or circle of friends by somebody with dementia?
Well, yes, I have many friends with parents who have dementia, and in my own family, my grandmother, one of my favorite people in the world, near the end of her life, she had some kind of dementia. I don't know that it was Alzheimer's, but it was a dementia that definitely changed her perception of reality. But in the experience, actually in my creative life, I have been very close to many people with dementia, working on especially on this project in the nursing home with one woman who actually became one of our sound people. She's a nurse, and she and I worked together to do some filmmaking with people in her creative daycare. So I got to hang out with them for years, and we spent many hours laughing and enjoying life. And I found that dementia can actually be a joyful time if people, the caregivers, have support and it's approached with some understanding. So it was a dementia-friendly community. So I was very fortunate to experience that.
Okay, great. I love that you mentioned the joy, because it's definitely there to be had, but you're only going to find what you're looking for. And a lot of times I believe we don't teach people to look for that or to even believe that it's possible. So Therese, I'm going to start with you first. Making an independent film was very different from what you did prior in healthcare, I'm sure. And I know that it's been a long journey, and my guess is it was a difficult one as well. I mean, 2011, we're almost coming up on 10 years, from this concept in your brain and your heart. And that commitment is, just something to really give you a pat on the back for, because a lot of people would have walked away and said, there's a little bit more work than I planned on. I don't think I'm going to go here. What drew you to really decide, I'm crossed the line, I want to tell this story?
That's a great question. A few years after my mother passed away, around 2010 into 2011, I got the idea to try to tell the story of the disease through the eyes of being a research participant and a caregiver, because I thought it was a different way of approaching telling the story in terms of, and I wanted it to be visual. So documentary film was the visual part. And the thought in my head was that through 3 stories of people in that research study and their experience as caregiving, we would get a window into the disease from both a caregiver perspective, but also a research participant perspective, and what's going on in the science of the disease. So that was my original concept back in 2011. I didn't know anything about filmmaking. I was able to work with a gentleman who gave me some first initial steps in the spring of 2011, do some research about other documentaries that had been done, etc. And after I met with him in August, he said, "This is a good idea." And I was a little surprised. And he said, "But I can't help you with this." And he sent me on my merry way. So that was the inception.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Melissa, how about you? What drew you in? How did you two connect?
Well, Therese called me, and she had received a reference actually from my mother, who is also one of the producers, Eileen Littig. Therese and Eileen were talking. And of course, my mother knew that I was in the thick at the moment of doing this project with people in an Alzheimer's daycare. So I was completely in that world of knowing people with Alzheimer's disease and loving them, really. And she knew, and also my documentary experience where it was at that time, she knew that I would really be interested in this. And so Therese called me, and it didn't take any time for me to see that what she was talking about was indeed a very good idea. I was intrigued by the notion. First of all, it's a really interesting perspective, because these are the people who are in a study, they actually have some power to make change. It's not a helpless feeling, right? So, and the world of, families, I love families. That's, to me, the most interesting thing about documentary storytelling is to tell it through relationships. So we have relationships just all through this story, and pretty much everyone is different. And because of our observational method, we just observe. Just the story is told through their relationships, and it's really about, to me, the story is about Alzheimer's disease research, but it's also about the resilience of families and relationships, and how some of them can endure and come out, with wisdom and gratefulness and joy, and how challenging it really is to all of them. Yeah, I just knew that there was going to be an adventure on the horizon. And then once we started meeting the people, I was just sucked in, because it's set in my home state, Wisconsin. I feel like these are my people. It was quite enjoyable.
Kind of the perfect storm, of everything coming together. So I think what we should do is just take a peek at the trailer right now, so that everybody can kind of be on the same page. And I think the audience is going to be as wowed and interested as I have been with this process, because Therese has been kind of sharing it with me as she's gone. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll come right back and regroup and dive a little deeper.
I can remember being at my mother's one time. She held her hand and she said, "Oh, I think I'm going crazy. I just think I'm going crazy. I can't remember anything." And we said, "Oh, Mother."
Hi, Mama.
Imagine seeing someone wither away. They don't know when to go to the bathroom, how to walk.
I was giving her a drink of water one day and she choked. We all panicked.
The girls, they all said, "Well, Dad, how are you going to take care of her? Just let Dad do it."
I was alone. I'm trying to deal with my mom, trying to get my son to school. Stress was part of my life, everyday life.
Yeah.
We're looking at a silent process.
Alzheimer's is not going to back down, and neither should we.
People with a parental family history are 2.5 times more likely to get the disease themselves.
I have lately thought, you got about another 10 years of memory left before you hit your mom's stage.
They told me about the study, and I said, "Oh, sign me up."
We ask for a name of someone who can speak for you if you lose capacity.
This study is about adult children of people who have Alzheimer's disease. We bring our participants in midlife, and we follow them as they age.
Take a breath and hold it.
It was one of the first to actually look at the adult caregiver, the adult child.
So if I were to ask you to be a part of our research study, what would your thoughts be?
I probably wouldn't be, we as African Americans are skeptical about research. Mm-hmm. We haven't had any past history of good fortune in research.
We still have the issue around Tuskegee.
The federal government was experimenting with 430 local black men who had contracted syphilis. They were used as human guinea pigs.
Even though we know folks don't want to be involved, we know we have to be involved.
I was going to really remember that one, but I don't. I'm noticing that things start to get really confused, and I can't track it anymore. This was the beginning. This was the beginning of the end.
Good, right there. We're going to be walking you real hard before you
Pass out?
Well, hopefully not.
A diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease does not mean a death sentence. You can still have quality of life.
Ooh, look at those pretty eyes.
Well, look at that.
Yeah.
She is in there after all.
If it hits my mom, I just want to have that care that I could just give it to her.
We can identify Alzheimer's disease 20 years ahead of time. This is tremendously important because it tells us that there may be an avenue of slowing down this disease in midlife, or in fact preventing it entirely.
This is quantum leaps.
That is huge.
We got quite a family.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, boy, was that cool. What was that like for you guys to see your trailer, and say, this piece is done? And Melissa, I'm going to start with you and then go to Therese.
That's a funny word, done, because it's never really done. You just sort of say, okay, that's as much time as we have. So this is really the first trailer. We know we're going to actually make a shorter trailer and trailer for other purposes. This is our festival trailer. And we worked with a wonderful editor, Jamie Schlenk, who provided a nice energy and a nice perspective. Having edited this whole thing, I was worn out. And we had wonderful assistant editors along the way, but after a while, you just, you need a fresh energy and fresh perspective. So she spent a lot of time just picking through it. The first version was 15 minutes and then it kept shrinking till now it's just under 4 minutes. It was exciting to see. Yeah, she made hard decisions.
Well, and you must have hours of footage that you have to dig through in order to pull something like this together too, I would imagine. And that's got to be, I wouldn't even know where to start, with all of that. So I can see where that would definitely be a process. Therese, what does it mean to you to see the first trailer out?
It is exciting because the trailer is something that a lot of people can see ahead of seeing the whole film. And so we get to put it places and finally have something to show people, even if they haven't seen the full film. So it is very exciting. It's a great tool. And I agree, Jamie did a great job. I was excited about kind of the pace. And like Melissa, after working on it for so long, you can lose perspective. And Jamie definitely brought a fresh perspective. And I think has made it an exciting piece of work that will push the desire in people to want to see more. That's how I feel about it. And after being involved for so long, that's saying a lot. It really, she did a great job. So I think it's a great way to help us give people a visual who may not see the full film for a while. It's a really good way of introducing them to what this is all about.
Yeah, I kind of related to having a baby, and it's the first time you're taking it outside all dressed up to meet everybody, and what do you think? We've been talking about this for 9 months, we're having a baby, and now it's here, except yours has been a 10-year process of talking about this concept and bringing it to fruition. Teresa, why don't you talk about the creative approach that you used in terms of telling the story and editing, because there's so many different approaches that you can have. So, Therese, why don't you just tell us what your thoughts were, and did it change over time too? Did you think maybe we're going to tell it this way, and then Melissa came in and said, no, maybe we should try this or that, and I mean, because I know I wouldn't even know where to start, or what are the options? I mean, I wouldn't have a clue.
Right, and I didn't have a lot of background. I'd been a fan of documentaries, and I had watched some documentaries that are told in this style, but I didn't know much. And it was really Melissa who brought forth the creative approach, explaining that telling these stories in a way where the viewer watches the action as it unfolds is really the most compelling way. And there are other documentaries that do well and reach people that are told in more of an interview based style or with a lot of, footage. but that's like a whole different type of documentary. In the independent world, the style is more this following the action as it unfolds. So I really took my cues from Melissa, who has a long career in documentary filmmaking. And the way she expressed it to me back at the time is that we will follow the characters on their journey. We will be a fly on the wall and watch what's going on in their lives and as they participate in research. That was just an amazing concept to me, even though I had seen it just the way she described it. And I knew that would definitely be the way we should proceed.
And being a fly on the wall when you've got a crew and a big camera and probably lights is probably no easy task to try to get everybody to not notice you and be real. Melissa, was there anything, A, that you wanted to add to Therese's comment? And then 2, how do you get people to feel comfortable with, this crew in their life now, in their living room, in their doctor's appointment, wherever it is? I mean, that isn't normal. I know on the show here, I get a lot of people, both on radio when I do video, and they are just so nervous. And, and yet time flies by, they get comfortable and in sync with things. But, if you're not interacting so much and you are just kind of being that fly on the wall observing, how do they just forget because you're so quiet?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Because, well, first of all, it was a very complicated process, actually, even to find the people who would be in the film, because we couldn't just ask them because there is this privacy issue. They're in a study. So we worked with the study and they volunteered essentially themselves. And then we auditioned. Actually, Therese pre-called them and sort of pre-auditioned to find out their stories. Then we went to their homes and we filmed them. That was sort of an audition. And so we got more of their stories. We hadn't intended to use our audition footage, but we ended up using a lot of it anyway. But the point being is we only would have used people who were very comfortable with us and really understood just ignore us thing. If they were self-conscious of the camera, we knew it would not work. So that was part of it. They just had to totally agree to just access, that we would be, allowed access. And of course they have always the right to say, no, don't. We had a day we really wanted to film and it was a very tough day for one of our characters. And she said, no, don't come. It was too hard. So we, of course, respect that privacy, but we mostly wanted to work with people who were very open and we could just fit right in. And as far as our crew was very small. When we were in Spooner, we were only 2 people at a time, just Therese and me, because we wanted to basically sort of blend in with the family. And basically, if you work quietly and you're there long enough, they just become bored with you anyway. And you just do what you have to do. And when we were in the hospital, we had more people. And there were a few times we actually had an excellent lighting gaffer because we needed lights and sometimes we needed some extra things. Sometimes we did have another person for interviewing. Okay. Sometimes Eileen did some of the interviewing. Sometimes Chandra, one of our amazing sound recordists, did the interviews. Sometimes Therese did. So we had other people when needed, but only when needed. We had another associate producer, Joe Hillman, who helped arrange things too. But basically, we tried to stay nimble, small, and carry our stuff. We had like whatever we could carry. It wasn't like a big, fiction film where we'd have a grip truck and backup beepers and everything. And the other thing is you have to stay quiet. You have to talk quietly. You can't even bring attention to yourself very much. So that was our approach. And what was the other question? I've heard you asked. Oh, you asked if I wanted to. The approach, right? Yeah. So one of the things we were trying to avoid is, we did want to avoid a narrator, so the whole story had to be told through scenes. Ideally, as much verite scene as possible, but it wasn't possible to tell the whole story that way. We tried, but you still need to lean once in a while on some interviews. So fortunately, the interviews were very good. So the interviews do help structure and help us know what's going on and help us know what's inside people's feelings, which you can't always get, or things that happened in the past. Because remember, we're following present day. We're following things as they unfold. So if something happened in the past, we need to get that from an interview or photos. And then the substitute for narration is text on screen. So no, there was an interesting balance of like when you use text, you want to say as much as possible in as few words and not confuse people, not introduce a tangent. There are many things we had to edit out that just, had a tangent, a number maybe, or a scientific word that's unnecessarily confusing. And we figured, we could still get the point without using that word. So it was always a matter of simplifying, so cutting it down to the bone. But then the scenes, we wanted them to play out, to be immersive. There was a balance there too. Sometimes they were too long, so we'd have, so there was always, it's all about balance and the experience of viewing.
Yep. Well, I can understand that. Now, Melissa, one of the things I want to ask you, because unlike, Therese, who lived through, a personal journey with Alzheimer's disease, what did you learn about Alzheimer's disease and dementia while making the film?
I definitely learned some things. With the family in Spooner, I really did not know that Alzheimer's disease can cause such physical incapacitation, because Irene in Spooner, Wisconsin, she was really at a very end stage, which I hadn't witnessed. Mm-hmm. In the Alzheimer's daycare that I worked at, they were more early stage and physically able, much more, not completely, but I didn't realize that swallowing is a extremely important issue. That was a revelation to me. And then also I learned through Karen's story how much, not only does Alzheimer's disease, you can think of it as past generations, it's affected your grandparents, but how much it can affect future generations, just because of the demands of time and how decisions have to be made, and even the kind of sensitivity that can come out of that. Young people can develop more sensitivity toward other people by being in a family with Alzheimer's disease.
Or even I would imagine the fear of, am I going to get it? I know that crosses family members' minds a lot. How about you, Therese? Did you learn anything through this process, even though, you walk the journey and stuff? Every family, goes through it just a little bit different.
I'm going to just take the question and maybe twist it just a bit. If we talk about Alzheimer's more in general, there's two things, like the Alzheimer's world. There's two things I learned. One is that in terms of the research side of it, there aren't enough people of color in research, and it's a problem. And I didn't realize that until we got into this story. And the woman who runs the outreach in Milwaukee for the research study, it was really eye-opening, and why that exists as well. So, and then the other thing I learned in terms of communicating with like-minded groups to help support us along the journey, find out what was happening in the world of Alzheimer's, I learned about it was maybe in its early stages or mid stages when I became aware of it, but the dementia-friendly community movement, which Melissa described in terms of what she did at that day program, but communities across the nation working with government, service providers, businesses, and people involved in Alzheimer's to make communities more welcoming for people and their families. Because when I went through the process with my dad and my mom, we felt like we had no place we could go outside of the home. And it was very isolating, not just for her, but for all of us. So those are some things I learned that were very eye-opening. And especially on the second one, it was wonderful. And that movement has continued to grow. And you've been a part of that too, Lori. I know in your community, you're part of one of those groups, and they just do such great work. And they're just an asset to the people that are affected by the disease.
Well, and one thing you might not know is actually I launched the first dementia-friendly community in the nation in Wisconsin, in Watertown. Watertown was the first one. And that was thanks to the Lutheran Home Association believing in it. I talked with the executive director at the time, Michael Klatt, and we met over several months. And then finally he said, okay, I'm gonna give you an hour with my staff. Come on down to Belle Plains in Minnesota. And he says, if you can convince them, we're off and running. So I go down there, and I'm all excited, and I'm nervous as heck, to do this. And I start talking, and I'm probably 10 or 15 minutes in, and Michael stops me. And I just think, I blew it. How did I blow it in 10 or 15 minutes? I mean, that's what's going through my head, and he's kicking me out the door. That's what I'm thinking. And he's like, Lori, look at them. They're in. No more pitching. Let's just talk. How are we going to do this? And so Wisconsin has been so progressive, and really it's been so fun to see all the memory cafes, that the McFaddens had started in their movement, and the dementia-friendly communities really getting the government support and stuff. It was incredible, but they were all so eager to hear about, what is this, and how are you doing this? And we've been talking about this for 2 years, and we still don't have our mission statement carved out. And I'm like, kick it to the curb and just go, just start, and let it unfold. And that's what you guys are doing with the film. You're just letting real life unfold and telling a true, authentic story. And to me, that is the most powerful way to make change, is to let the authentic voices of people say what they have to say, because it's really pulling back the curtain on something that is so hidden. And I know our family did it. We didn't really let everybody know what it was really like. And we thought that was dignified. And it's like, well, dignified, schmignified, you're not going to get any help if nobody knows. You have to tell the story. So, Therese, I want to ask you, what are your plans moving forward? I know you've been in some of the film festivals. So what have you been in? Is there one coming up? And how can people see the film?
So the whole way to birth a documentary is very complicated, more complicated than I would have imagined. But one of the ways you can take is to apply and have the film seen at film festivals, where you can, get some interest and traction. And sometimes distributors go to festivals. If you're lucky, you might get good press. So we're on the festival journey, and we have few that we're applying to. But in terms of what we've been able to achieve and get into so far, the first festival we got into in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Film Festival, got canceled due to COVID in the spring. That was a little disappointing, but we moved on, and we are going to now premiere at a festival in southern Utah called Doc Utah in the first week of November. So that will be our first, grand launch, where people attending that festival will be able to see the full film. We also are fortunate to have been accepted into the Raw Science Film Festival. It's a newer festival about a very passionate woman leading the charge of that festival. It's out in Los Angeles, and she's very committed to having the festival in person. So she's delayed it until the first week of February. So we are selected for that. We have applied to some others for the spring of next year, and hopefully we'll be in a few more. We'll also be teeing up community screenings in places where we aren't really going to be in a festival. And we are at the same time starting our journey to look for distribution. And Melissa can probably talk a little bit more about those last two, but that's kind of the broad brush. So 2021 is going to be a very busy year.
Given COVID gets out of the way.
Hopefully.
Melissa, why don't you go ahead and add on to that? The film festivals, I've heard so many people do that, and I have heard how complicated it is and how costly it is too. Put in an application, and then, if you get accepted, going out there. I mean, it's stuff people, I think, just don't really think about a lot of times in terms of getting your work out in force. But yet it seems to be a really good way in order to raise awareness of the work that you've done. So feel free to add on to the question, where do you go moving forward, and how did you feel the process was?
Yeah, well, what we would like to do is get the film seen by people who want to see it. We know there is a large population, hungry viewers who want to see this movie. And it's just a matter of, right now, our festival run is to basically just come out, be birthed, and get some exposure and have more fun like we're having with you talking about it. Like, you're one of the first people we've actually had this sort of public discussion about it, which is, we'll do more of this. And then, but eventually we need to find a distributor who can help get this film into the living rooms of people who want to see it. And that's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I worked with a film, and it's called A Timeless Love, and we did a lot of the community screenings. And one of the reasons we chose that was we were able to then have a talk back and connect people to resources. Because one of the things I was a little scared of was, what if they don't watch the whole thing? What if they don't get to the joyful part and the place that allows you to breathe? You know, what if they cut off halfway through and go, oh, I just can't do that? Or what if that hits us, or we're going down this path, and then they just turn it off? You know, I didn't want to add to the stress. So I think the community screenings are wonderful. Yet I still, to this day, we get a lot of people going, where can we get the DVD? You know, can we stream this? And so I still, you know, and we're not doing that with this particular film. And I don't know if we made the right decision or not, you know, in that process, but I know how powerful the community events were, because people said it was just nice to know I'm not alone. You know, they just felt comfortable in those, seated with perfectly, you know, strange people. And some of them were telling stories that they'd never told anybody before. And, you know, to me, that's a miracle in and of itself, for people to feel that comfortable and that connected and that accepted in that world. So it's just, it's amazing what film can do, because I think it takes people back, because they're like, well, we're going to the movies, you know, and then we're like, whoa, we just went to the movies. We need to have a conversation. We got to talk. I got to process this. This was real life stuff, you know, and how can I help with all of that? For distribution, do you have ideas in mind? Are you like thinking Netflix or DVDs or HBO or, you know, public stations? Or
Yeah, we are just beginning that. You know, probably not DVDs, because they're not as, some place people don't even have DVD players anymore. Some don't. But streaming maybe, and some broadcast network of some kind. So that's what we're toying with. And I mean, even before broadcast or streaming, yes, we do want to do community screenings for exactly the reason you just described. It's very empowering to be with an audience. It's an amazing experience to watch the film with an audience and discuss it and come out more enriched. So if people just watch it on their own, you know, they can read more about it or they can have their own feelings, but to really make change happen, it's an audience is what you really want, ideally.
Yeah. Well, and I think the power of film too, and I showed the one that we were doing down in Texas. I think we were in Texas. And one of my, you know, deals is, you know, we have to have a room where you can darken the room. And they put me in this room that had all this upper lighting and, you know, natural light, and we couldn't darken the room. And so the screen was almost white. I mean, and I'm dying, and I'm like, I go up, you know, to the executive director, and I'm like, I can pivot, you know, I can do a program here. And he just looked, and he's like, look at them. Look at them. They are engaged. They are hanging on every single word. And to me, that was just incredible that they could listen to the story. They didn't even need the visuals because the story was so powerful. And people came up afterwards going, oh no, because I was still questioning, did we do the right thing? And they were like, no, that was, you know, and I was like, wow. I mean, it just gave me a whole nother realm of respect for film, you know, because we're always looking at, you know, the beauty and, you know, how it unfolds. But again, it's the words and the authentic voices of your people living everyday lives, you know, and trying to adapt and learn and adjust through this too, that are just going to really ping at people's hearts as well. And then the hope of, you know, the studies and the research and and things that you guys dive into as well is really, really cool.
I have one more thing that's important, just in terms of community. We were quite conscious of our crew. Like, our crew has experience with Alzheimer's disease. Everybody from Therese, the one woman I mentioned who ran that creative daycare, Amy Krepp, was a sound person. Our impact producer, Karen Durgan, she saw her mother and her stepfather both through end of life with Alzheimer's. And actually, Amy Krepp saw her father through end of life with Alzheimer's disease. Joe Hillman, our associate producer, is also in the study. And we were like, we are the community. I mean, I had mostly my experience with, people in the dementia-friendly world, but we were that community. It wasn't like we were filming something that was strange to us. So I think that actually helped with the intimacy of the storytelling. And when we take it on the road, we are all the same. We are the same as the people in the audience, and the same as the people on camera and behind the camera. We all care, and we all want to make a difference. So that's just, I guess, the authenticity of what we attempted to do.
Wonderful. Therese, go ahead.
I just want to add, I don't want to leave our production assistant out. Jean Wentz lost her father to Alzheimer's. So really quite a team who all have, back to your original question, how have you been touched? We all were touched. And I think Melissa made an excellent point, but I didn't want to leave Jean out.
Yes, thank you. That's good. And another interesting point is we were almost entirely, except for the post-production process and our lighting gaffer, a female crew.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we were super female, super women, because this disease touches women more than men. And we felt completely empowered to tell this story, put it that way. Now, we had some excellent men in the end stages of color correcting and sound design, and our lighting person, but that was about it. We were all female powered.
Wow. Well, that's fun. Therese, how would you like the film to make a difference in the world? What's your end goal?
Well, I've had a lot of time to think about this, and looking back in the beginning, I was thinking about widening the awareness, because I felt that unless you were touched by this disease, you didn't really understand it. And I think even to this day, there's some of that, although many more people have friends and relatives, but there's still a stigma attached to the disease after all this time. So I believe that we need to get people that aren't touched on board with awareness to help be part of the solution in whatever way possible, whether that's, the dementia-friendly community movement, participating in a clinical trial. So I also feel that for those who are touched, that they will, in viewing the film, feel that they're not alone. And that can be a powerful experience. And as we look to, one of the things that's important about documentaries is you want, other than awareness, which is what I just mentioned, you want people to take action. You want people to do something different in their lives because of seeing your film. So we've worked as a team to try to figure out what those goals would be in light of where we are with Alzheimer's. And here are a couple of them. One is to, help promote the dementia-friendly community movement, which we talked about at length. Another one of those goals is to get people to understand that the research is really important, and we can't get to the solutions unless people volunteer for research. And so that's definitely part of our goal. And one of the things that has come out in the film, and you've also heard it in the news, is that a healthy lifestyle can make a difference potentially in dementia and Alzheimer's. Maybe not maybe not, we're not talking complete cure by any means, but maybe staving it off for a number of years. So when we think about everything we've learned on the medical front about, what you do for a healthy heart, well, those same things are being pointed out for a healthy brain. And if we can get people to take that to heart and move on that, they can be in somewhat command of the future of their own brain. And that's a really important message.
Yep, definitely. Melissa, how about you? How do you envision the film making a difference in the world?
You can ask me that question too. I feel like we owe it to our families. And by our families, I mean the families we filmed, who are also sort of became our families, and they're like our own families. Our families and our donors and our crew and the scientists, everyone who opened the door for us and made this possible, we owe it to them that everything's going to be a little better because of this film. And and really basically it's a lot of what Therese said. Awareness of health, like how we can maybe stave off dementia for a few years by taking better care of ourselves through physical exercise or eating well. How we can be respectful and sensitive to families who are going through a dementia journey and making life easier with dementia-friendly practices. And just encouraging people to try research. One of the biggest needs now in Alzheimer's disease are people to be in clinical trials. So the study that we followed, it's not a clinical trial. It's trying to find out what causes Alzheimer's disease and how to prevent it or slow it down. But really a big need are people to try the new medications that are emerging. And if people have the bravery to do that and realize that they can change the future, that would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be just a beautiful piece? And I think your film can do all that. I think it's going to engage people. One thing that I do want to mention that is something that I learned in terms of doing those community screenings was I would suggest, if you can, do a series, because what I found was people who saw it wanted to bring someone else back. They wanted to expand the conversation. So if you're in one community, try to have a couple different screenings spread out, over a month or quarterly basis or whatever it is. But people were just like, oh, so-and-so's got to see this, so-and-so. And they really wanted to have that expanded conversation. And in a lot of places, I was just there for a conference or something, and I didn't have that ability to do that. But if you've got that ability, I would highly, highly recommend that, because I think that's something that you will see from people, that they will want to share your work with others because it touched them. It gave them hope. It gave them insights, and they wanted to share that because they know they can't summarize the whole thing, and it's more powerful to watch and let them feel it for themselves. So kudos to you and your crew and your stars of the film for being brave enough to share their life stories with us. I think it makes a huge, huge difference to not only your family and the crew, but just our society at large. We need to have these conversations. We need to expose all sides. We need to help people figure out, what even is a clinical trial? Because a lot of people don't even know they even exist. I mean, if their doctor doesn't tell them, it's not something that, you think of right away. Oh, let's go do this. You got too many other things on your list. So that whole thing to me needs to be broached a little bit different and be a little more organized and user friendly, for them to be able to step in and step up. Now, people can go to your website, which is determinedmovie.com. You're also on Facebook.
If you use the little @ @determined, will take you right to it's the first thing that'll pop up, which I did not know.
Okay.
Till recently.
So @determined, you will find it pretty much on social media. I've also listed Therese and Melissa's email if you want to reach out to them directly. It is tberry-tanner@hotmail.com for Therese, and Melissa is Melissa, and her last name is spelled Godoy @mac.com. Ladies, again, thank you so much for your dedication and work and sharing this with our community here on Alzheimer Speaks. I'm just thrilled to have you here today with us.
Thank you so much, Lori. Thank you for being part of the journey. As you mentioned earlier, you watched a couple of the rough cuts and provided feedback. So you've been supportive all the way, and we really appreciate that. And thank you for today.
Thank you. And to our listeners, again, like, click, and share, spread the word, and find out how you might be able to see the movie Determined. Thank you.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now, this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.